I know they say that true perfection is something humans cannot attain or create, and that perfection itself is subjective, but I truly do believe Fran Bow reaches near perfection when it comes to accomplishing not only what it aims to do, but going beyond that into being a perfect example. In Fran Bow, you play as Fran Bow, a 10-year-old girl suffering from trauma and mental illness after waking up one night to find her parents had been murdered. The intro cinematic depicts how Fran was in a loving family and gifted a black cat which she named Mr. Midnight. That everything was just fine until one night. Fran sees a strange creature outside her window. Her attention is grabbed by the sound of her mother screaming before she wanders into her parents' bedroom and discovers their dismembered corpses. Panicking and distraught, she runs away with her cat before tripping and falling unconscious, where two individuals arrive and rescue her. The game then cuts to Fran in Oswald Asylum, being counseled by her doctor, Dr. Deern. After some back and forth, Fran is given a little purse, which was a gift left by her Aunt Grace. Then a nurse comes in with Fran's new medicine, which Fran takes and experiences a hallucinogenic episode before falling unconscious, where she is quickly taken back to her room and cared for. The scene finishes with another mental scene where Fran Bow's cat, Mr. Midnight, tells her in her dreams that she needs to wake up and that the duotine medicine will help her escape the asylum. The game then opens up and we are immediately able to move around. By interacting with different things around the room, the game very quickly establishes that you are indeed playing as a 10 to 11-year-old girl, as her reactions to a lot of the things you click on for her to look at are the kinds of reactions and responses that a child may have. When examining the clipboard hanging up on the wall next to Fran Bow's bed, it reveals a medical report that explains that when Fran Bow was found outside, she was suffering from psychosis. The game's first chapter takes place within the asylum as Fran tries to find a way to escape, wanting to find her cat and return home to her Aunt Grace. After waking up with that goal in mind, Fran must help the other children residing within the asylum in order to get the keys she needs to escape the asylum. After escaping the asylum, Fran Bow's main objective becomes trying to find her cat, Mr. Midnight. This causes her to end up in the home of a pair of conjoined twins, Clara and Mia. Clara and Mia Bolhamet. The twins are holding Mr. Midnight hostage and threaten to kill him if Fran Bow does not help them. They task Fran Bow with preparing a ritual that is supposed to separate them into two separate bodies, so that they can get their revenge on a creature named Itward. After gathering items around the house and using a typewriter to trick the twins, Fran successfully frees the twins' souls and gets the key to free her cat, before using the toad that helped Fran cross the river. Trying to get back home, Fran gets attacked by the creature she believes killed her parents, Remor, the Prince of Darkness. There she falls to her death, where she is reborn as a tree in the second reality, Ithursta. After much deliberation, Fran Bow must wander around Ithursta, gathering the supplies necessary to help the Great Wizard of Ithursta remember how to perform the spells necessary to both turn her back into a human and give her a way back home. After doing so and saying farewell to the citizens of Ithursta, Fran is able to return to the third reality, Pandora, the reality that Earth exists in. After running away from a monster, Fran manages to get her pills back and runs into a figure from her childhood, Itward. Itward promises to help Fran get home, but needs help gathering some material to start up his little flying ship thing. After helping gather the supplies and setting up the necessary parts, they fly off towards their home, but are attacked by a Kamala, a creature originating from the fifth reality, Obscura, the same reality Remor and his mother Mabuka originate from. Fran manages to fight off the Kamala, but she is too late and Itward hugs Fran and her cat protectively as the ship crashes. Fran and Mr. Midnight wake up in the woods near her house and go to reach it, Fran hoping to find her Aunt Grace there. Her cat goes into the second-story window to try and open the door since it's locked, but Dr. Deern suddenly appears and takes Fran to the grave of her parents. After reaffirming that her parents are dead, Remor attacks when they try to leave, making Dr. Deern vanish and then knocking out Fran. The game picks back up with Fran locked to a bed with Aunt Grace looking at her, and after some dialogue, Fran manages to access the ultra reality without the use of her pills. She meets an alternate version of herself who helps her escape the bed, and the majority of the chapter is spent with you walking between different zones in that specific reality, gathering key after key until you get the right key you need to access a flask of tears you can give to the patient next in line to see the doctor, who in exchange for the tears gives Fran his ticket. The ticket number is then called, where Fran is directly confronted by Remor, who reveals to Fran the truth about who had murdered her parents. After regaining consciousness, Fran accesses the final room where she meets with her Aunt Grace. Aunt Grace attempts to kill Mr. Midnight, and after seemingly throwing him into the abyss, Fran attacks her in anger, only for Oswald to roll into the room and shoot her, planning to use her for experiments. Before they can get her, Itward arrives and saves Fran. Pelantris performs some magic and revives Fran before dealing with Dr. Deern, who is starting to get corrupted by Kamala. The game then ends with Fran, Mr. Midnight, Pelantris, and Itward flying through the air, presumably to return to Athursta. Throughout the game, it is repeatedly hammered home that throughout all of her adventure, Fran is still suffering from the trauma of losing her parents, and that she's only 11 years old. This is an 11-year-old girl experiencing all these things, and thanks to Fran Bow's successor, Misfortune, we know that everything that Fran Bow experiences is real. It's not all in her head or her hallucinating. Athursta, Mother Mabuka, Remor, all of those things really exist in the world of Fran Bow. The entire game revolves around Fran having to use the duotine pills in order to see the truth about the reality around her. Entire areas and buildings change, disappear, appear, shift, and other things occur when she takes the pills and enters the other reality. But the most notable is how no matter where you are, almost every single area you stand in when using the pills causes things to change into a very grotesque, brutal, and bloody scenery. Keep in mind, Fran Bow's trauma stems from her having regained consciousness to find herself standing before the mutilated and dismembered bodies of her parents. So a lot of the stuff she sees within what I'm going to call the pill reality typically are things involving dismembered bodies, dead bodies, and other things that all relate back to the source of her trauma. This is actually a depiction of something that could actually occur to a child who is suffering from the trauma of such an event. Now, it is implied that it's the duotine she takes that is causing the grotesque imagery, but the duotine is a drug that is affecting her brain where her memories are stored. So while the duotine may be causing her to see these things, it is her trauma that the hallucinations are forming from. Now, the reason I believe it does this so well is that the things she sees, only she can see. Not even her cat can see the things she sees when she's on the duotine. But what I believe is one of the game's strongest aspects is how well they depict a child's interpretation of seeing such things. Now, the way that Fran interacts with a lot of these grotesque sightings truly show how she's just 11 years old. A good example of this comes in the very first chapter, where using the duotine pills and looking through one of the windows of her room reveals a group of 3 masked creatures, one of them holding up Fran's decapitated head. But instead of freaking out or being horrified, Fran, in her childlike innocence, asks for the creatures to give her head back. Now, most adults who visibly saw this in their life would most likely panic, become paranoid, maybe realize that they are hallucinating. But Fran interacts with a lot of things she sees in this pill reality, similar to this, in much of the same childhood innocence type way. Since she is still young, she does not fully understand or comprehend the things she is seeing the way adults or older teens would. So these grotesque sights she sees are interacted with in a very innocent and young-minded point of view. There are scenes that show she is still haunted by her trauma, such as the mother scene in Athursta, the scene of her watching an alternate version of herself stabbing a black cat toy that looks like Mr. Midnight, causing it to bleed and calling the cat a traitor, The very first scene of her first taking the meds where the room turns red and a bunch of decapitated heads of her mother and father start raining down, and multiple others. But outside of those cutscenes, when she's walking around hopped up on duotine seeing all these grotesque things, she doesn't react in the same way she does when in Remor's presence or when seeing things involving her parents. Despite seeing these grotesque things, she doesn't even bat an eye or seem afraid. Her reactions still remain that of a young 11-year-old girl who doesn't fully understand her surroundings. Now, Fran is not dumb, she's actually very smart and resourceful. But at her core, she is still young, and her young, stubborn mind is best shown near the end of the game where she finally confronts Remor. At the very end of the game, right before the final scene, Fran is wandering through the 5th reality after being granted passage by Mother Mbuka. This reality takes the form of a shattered hospital interior, with a nurse, waiting room, and doctor's office. This is connected to several other sections locked behind doors that Fran goes around helping people and using her resourceful nature to gain access to her ticket needed to have an audience with the Doctor, who's revealed to be none other than Remor. Fran confronts Remor, still believing that because she saw him outside her window that fateful night, he was the one that killed her parents. But after Remor mocks Fran a bit, he grabs her and reveals to her the truth. It was actually Fran that had murdered her own parents, under the control of Remor, Prince of Darkness. This is an absolutely amazing twist, because it makes you look back at past events of the game and realize it was alluding to this the whole time, especially in Athirsta. Specifically 3 scenes. The scene in the Athirsta throne room of a Fran speaking and then jumping off a ledge, and the scene where Fran sees a dressed up version of herself with bloody eyes, calling Mr. Midnight a traitor and stabbing the cat doll she is holding. The scene in Athirsta of the Kamala opening its mouth to show a grotesque figure of her mother beckoning for Fran to join her is also there. All of these scenes alluding to the idea that perhaps there's more going on than just this demon guy killed her parents. And this still ties to the game's main themes of mental illness, because when children of Fran's age experience something so traumatic, especially when it occurred by their own hands without them knowing it, it creates this disconnect where they don't realize the truth because their mind creates a sort of safety protocol, where it essentially tries to block out those traumatic memories as they grow up. Fran Bow is a genuine masterpiece. It has a story to tell, a gameplay and art style that complements the ability to tell that story, and it combines it all into a beautifully crafted yet also thought-provoking narrative and gameplay. While I did tell you what happens, I do believe it is a game that if you have any genuine level of interest in, you should absolutely play it. I had previously seen playthroughs of it when it first came out in 2015, but playing it now in 2024, I still felt blown away by how well made and thought out the game was. But if you believe that there's more to the game that I missed, please tell me what you think in the comments below alongside other characters or stories as a whole you would like me to cover. And while you are down there, you should like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Also make sure to hit that noti bell so you never miss an upload. Till next time, darlings.